Hello, welcome everybody to another exciting, exhilarating stream with wacky, crazy me, Paul. Thanks about the gremlin. That was a personal project, but I'm going to probably. I've actually been working on creating molds and casts, in essence, inside of ZBrush. So I'm actually working on 3D printing out the mold itself on like a 12-inch scale. That one's a 24-inch scale that's in the image. I can put it on camera again if you want to see it on camera. Normally I have them rotating over my corner over here, but I didn't put them up today. So I'm thinking about doing that as well. I've been working on that, getting that into 3D printing, doing on like the new Form 3L printer, so I can print in a larger size, and then get my FFF printer on doing the hard shell, so I can do the pores. And then I have a Christmas tree ornament one. So that one I think I'm just gonna straight up print it out. Straight up print it out. So let me readjust my microphone here too. I bumped my microphone. Let's get it closer to me, because I'm not loud enough. Jared, you're joining us again, huh? Man, I'm surprised I'm even showing you anything you don't even already know. Well, thank you for joining. And yeah, if you guys want to see that, maybe I can try and get that done for my next stream. Show you guys how I am actually using ZBrush to create the molds. Ideally, I'd prefer to have the 3D prints in person though. So that when I show it to you guys, I can also physically show you the actual print itself. Jared, you're always welcome. You come to the class now. Okay, so yeah, well, let's shoot for that. I'll shoot for that for one of the things I can share with you guys. I'll put that on my schedule and see. I probably won't be able to do it next week. It's just my next week's already pretty busy. I'll try. And try and see if I can get that done for next week for my next stream, and that way I can show you guys that. And Wintry Snowman, it's been a while. Great to have you back. So I haven't decided any of that yet, Vladimir, what I'm going to use. I'm not going to use a silicone. I'm 3D printing it all in essence, but I haven't decided anything for the actual cast itself. I'm just doing the molds inside of ZBrush, and then I'll print it off their printer for their material. That'll be a flex material. I have some flex material printouts. I don't think I have anything left here in my office here, because you can print flex on a Form 2. I have a Form 2, so I've printed some flex material. Like I did like tires, where you can actually squeeze the tire itself. And then I did the rim in like a actual tough material, because I turned it into a snap joint. So like that's what this is. So this is a snap joint that I did in ZBrush. And then this is printed off of Form 2. Here, let me get it more centered there. And then you can rotate it. You know, here, let's temporarily make my camera the big thing. Oh, that's... sorry about that, everybody. There you go. So you see, I made it so, see, it can move. Still in there, right? I'll let it focus. My hand moving keeps making it want to focus and autofocus, right? And then so this turns, right? So you have this turning, see? But I printed these separately, and I made them snap. So what it is, it's got a give, and it clicks. You know, I can show that really, really, really quick. Actually, let's add that into today's stream. How you would do that. Okay. So I'll add that. Let's add that. You know, we could probably start with that, and go there with that. Hey, Alex, welcome back again. I don't remember other Alex who sculpted this dude. I don't remember. who sculpted it. Okay, so since we were talking about this, and since you guys asked, let me resize me back down. We don't need me this big in this. That my loud obnoxiousness is enough. Let me put me back there just as a thought in the wind here, a picture on a picture. Okay, so nice, Allie. All right, so the snap joint, what I was talking about, I could probably find the one I did, but I'll remake it kind of for you guys real fast, kind of where I went with it. And this just shows you how fast I can do this, right? So I literally just used a cylinder. So let me brighten that up so you guys can see that, and I'm going to switch a different material. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to use this cylinder. I'm going to adjust my initialized state, and I'm assuming it sounds like my audio's fine for everybody, and the video is fine. I see it on my other computer, so it seems like we're all good to go now on the audio and the video. I see it jumping. Okay, so I'm going to do a cylinder real quick. I'll just make this a poly mesh. And so what I want to do is make this have a little bit of some length to it. So I'm going to give it a little bit of length. All right. And I'm going to switch to Z Modeler. Okay. And then we'll go right about, I'd say right about there. I'd say it's pretty good. And we'll throw another edge loop in there. Okay. And then now what I want to do is I want to make like a little ridge, because I need a little ridge, right? Because when this snaps in, I can't have it be pulled out, right? So like this you guys can't see it. Like this is a dead piece in essence. I should print off both so we can have both. So this can't be pulled out now, right? Because the wheel is right here, right? This is sitting inside the chassis. Oh, sorry. This part's sitting, the bigger part's sitting inside the chassis, and then this little top part that's turning, that's where the wheel would be in essence, okay? So I need a little bit of a ridge. You don't need any, and then this is the misnomer. You don't need anything really large, you know. Even a couple millimeters is usually pretty good. Even like 5 millimeters is usually enough. Like something small. You don't want to go too big, because then you got to worry about getting that to flex. That's why I'm calling it a snap joint. It snaps into place, right? So that's probably good enough for me. I'm going to take the top part of this, and let's go ahead and pull on all that poly grouping. So we get a little bit, I need a tapering to happen up here. Okay, so I want to have a little bit of taper through here. Okay, and then I'm going to make that taper be a lot bigger. Something more like that. I'd say somewhere around in there. Okay. I'm going to throw a little bevel on this as well. Okay, so something around and like this. Okay. And you know what? I'm going to, let's give a little bit more lip for the purpose of what we're doing here. Just a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so I would do something like this, and then I would throw some creasing on this by the old PG'er, the old poly group. For those that know my streaming, the old Paul Gaboury, right? So you have something like this, right? And so the goal would be is let's insert now another cylinder. And let's position this, right? So your goal is this cylinder that I just inserted is going to be, in essence, the chassis and what the wheel would connect into, right? So, whoops. Let me put that back. Turn dynamic back on. I turned it off. Okay, so something like this. You need this to snap into that. Okay, so what I'm going to obviously do is use this as a subtractive. Okay, so I'm going to reuse, in essence, the joint to be my subtractive in this other cylinder. So I'm going to duplicate this, drop it below, and then make a start group. So I'm going to click this arrow here to start group this. And what that's going to do is tell ZBrush, hey, this subtool, which is in essence my main subtool right now, has subtools below it. And whatever subtools are below it, I want it to be affected by this. Okay, so I turn this into a subtractive, and then I live Boolean this, right? So in essence, what I'm doing is I'm doing that. I'm cutting out, right, the inner portion of that big cylinder to host the snap joint that I'm working on. Okay. And then I usually give it a little bit of inflating, just a touch of inflation. Okay. So, because I want to have a little bit of wiggle room. You don't, and again, you don't really need a lot. And a lot of this is also going to come down to, however, if I'm printing something like I did the Gremlin, I used 24 inches. And for that project, I was printing just like, little vehicles that were like maybe 10 inches in length, right? So that does play a part on how much inflation do you really need, right? Because something rather physically larger, just a little inflate isn't really doing much. And then something a lot tinier, a little inflate is actually a big movement, okay? So it is relevant to the physical size that you're ending the printout at, all right? So for me, for this is what I'm going to do. This is what I did for that project. I'm just going to go with what I did with that project. Okay, so I'm going to convert this dynamics because I want it to be real topology. Like I want this to be, in essence, not dynamic subdivs, but actually be divided up like this. Okay, and the reason why I'm doing that is I've got more topology. So then when I go to do the inflation, instead of being really low topology, that would move a lot. I don't want to move so much. So for this one, I did it like an inflation of like 5. And then that was it. That's it. It's barely any movement. Like, so if we turn this off and I undo, redo, undo, redo, undo, redo, right? It's enough for me to just get some space in there, okay? And then now you can throw this on and you should start seeing a little bit of a gap in there. Now, something that you guys might want to do to help also, just to see what's going on here for you, a little thing that I'll do a lot when I'm going to 3D print my stuff. I want to take a quick look and make sure, okay, did I get enough room in there? Okay, I'll add, like a cube is usually what I'll use. I'll just throw a cube in here, and I'll make it rather large, and then I'll turn that into subtract and let it start cutting through, right, the elements in here too. So this is something that I will do as well, is to start looking through so you can kind of start seeing, engaging things, and then you can see the gap right there, right? So if I went back to this, let's throw some more gap on this then, so you guys can really see that. Let's get a little more crazy, right? So you can see that gap there. Now that's being made, right? So this is something that I'll tend to do as well, okay? I'll tend to throw a little cube in there and just make sure I got a little bit of give in there so that I can get the piece in. Okay, and again, I don't need a ton, but it's something I like to do, is like a double eye check in there. Okay, and there is a way. ZBrush's default measurement is actually millimeters. So if I come in here, I can actually use this to measure out millimeters. And if I'm just going millimeters with the default ZBrush, okay, I can just move this to right there. So that green line, where this yellow line, or the orange and the red line is, and that green line, it gives you the units up here. Okay, 0.00065. So there's not a lot of give in there. Okay, so but if you want to, what I also tend to do if I'm going to be 3D printing something, then my go-to plugin for me, okay, would be using the Scale Master. And so I will set my scene scale, okay, and then if I'm working in the millimeter world, okay, I'll click on the millimeter, and then that sets this world to millimeters, which it, by default it already is, and then it also automatically converts this transpose line to be measuring in millimeters in essence as well still. So you can see in the top left, it'll tell you in millimeters now, right? So let me turn on my handy dandy magnifier. So that right now pulled out 4.9. So here, let me move this again. Okay, and then you can see the measurement up there. So obviously, if we were going to do this in, if we went to this plugin and said, hey, let's do inches, feet, all that updates and in essence sets the world for you. Okay. So you could do things like this as you're going. Okay. Anxious, you're going to want to get an update then. So if you're using the transpose line, so you're not using the gizmo always. So this is just something we got to get fixed. It's a known issue for what you're bringing up. We just got to fix it. But right now, just switch to the gizmo, and you can do also the same thing. However, I think, hold on, let me see. I think I'm trying to remember now. What you're talking about this, how it shoots off. So that's just something we got to get fixed. But you can switch to the gizmo, and it does the same thing. So Anxious Dreamers, just switch to the gizmo for now, and just hold control and click on any of the arrows, and that'll give you the same thing, your duplicate. Okay? All right, so back to this. So then the last thing that I'll do to really make this be a snap joint, in essence, okay, is I actually need another cube, right? So I'm just going to use this cube. So I'll have something like this, okay? So I'll have two start groups. One of them is going to be the joint snap thing that's going to snap in, right? And the other thing is obviously the female end, okay? So this is the male end, this is the female end, right? So when I'm looking at this, right, I want to do something like moving this cube like this. And let me turn dynamic back on, okay? And now I want something like, here, let's bring it in here and size it down so you guys can see. And then I push in like that, and then there you go. You need something like that, right? So what happens is, because there's not going to be any material there, this and this are going to flex and bounce back. So that's why you got to use a material that actually does that for your 3D. But you can't just use any 3D printed material. It's not necessarily going to work with just any type of material. Form Labs themselves make specifically a material to do this. It's their tough material lines. They have a line of tough materials, and that's what I use to do that joint. So it'll snap in, and then like it'll go in, and then flex in, and then pop back out. Right? That's it. That's all you got to. This is all you got to do. And then once you have this, myself for the project, I wanted to use this in several locations. Okay, so you can either obviously convert this and turn this into a mesh if you want to, but let's not forget you can also just make a folder. Okay. Well, my caps lock was on. Hold on, my caps lock phone. Let me rename my folder here. There we go. Okay. So I like to put this also in a folder, right? So if I want to go use it somewhere else on a model, I can. And I don't have to have the result version this way if I don't want to have the resulted version. It's easy to get the result version now. You just click on your gear, and I tell the Boolean with dsdiv, and then boom. And then now you guys go put this wherever you want, right? But the reason why I do the folder is you're going to need the male and you're going to need the female and the male, right? So if I'm moving this somewhere else on a model, I'm always not only going to need this, I'm also going to need that one, which is the one that's going to cut in, right? So it could be beneficial for you guys to do something like this. And I would say I rename this the cut, right? And then I would name this the snap cube. So this is the part that's going to create the snapping ability. And then this would be called the snap joint. Okay, in essence, right? So now I'd have all this in a folder. And the benefit to this, okay, is this is all sitting like this. So I'm just turning off live Boolean so you guys can visually see. And then now I can just duplicate this folder, right? So I go in my gear options, and I just go to duplicate. Let me make sure you guys can see it. And then I say, okay. And then now I've got two versions of this, right? So this is going to give me the power to now transpose set. And now I can move, see this, and position this somewhere else on the model. can 45 degree angle, whatever I want to do, position somewhere else. And then everything's still in that folder. Okay? So this is a way that I did this project because I wanted to reuse this snap joint multiple times in other locations on the project that I was working on. Okay? So that's it. That's how I did this. It's really not complicated. It's quite simple. So that's how this was made. And again, for those that are just joining us, this is giving me the ability to turn and put two pieces together, but then they don't come apart, but then they allowed to be turned. So that's what I was going for that. Okay? So there you go. So there's that little tip. So back to this guy. I know we love him. Okay? And then he ships with ZBrush. If you're trying to pull it back out, then you're going to have, because I put a lip, right, on it, so it can't be pulled back out. So, yeah, if you wanted to, so where I'm assuming where your mind went there was, let me grab, here, this is the one I got. Okay, you went here, and you're like, your thought process was, which was a good one, is putting a bevel here, right? So we get rid of this, so having that ability, you're talking about doing something like that to try and pull it back out. Yes, that's going to be more difficult just with the material. Because if I'm using, for example, using the material that I use, that wouldn't work because this is not going to flex. This is solid here, so it's not really going to flex. So it still would not come out. You would need to get the calculation for them. You can do a mixture of material, possibly. They have a different way as far as UV curing it, so there might be more flex available, but still keep some harshness. So that's what you would have to do. It would be more on doing something like this, and then it would be about the process of your 3D printing is what's going to come into play, right? Because even for these, I have a UV cure, so you have to cure them too to make this actually hold its components, to have the ability to adjust and snap back without breaking. So if you're curing it at a different time, you could play with that, yes. But that was not my goal. I didn't want the wheels to come back out. Right, if I wanted the wheels to come back out, I wouldn't do a snap joint. I would do, I'm sure you guys have seen it, where you push in and then you turn, and then it pops back out, and then it's got like a, you would have, so what I mean by that, if I was going to do what you wanted to do, I would do a different type of joint in essence, a different type of connecting two pieces together. I would do more of a twist, turn, and then it pops into place kind of a thing, and then it can't turn again unless I push in and then turn, and then it comes out, right? So I would have something like here, like what I mean by that is you're going to have some kind of piece here. Let's just, if I can quickly, what's in my head, throw it together for you really quick. So I would say here, let's duplicate this. Let's size this way down. Let's make this bigger. So I'd have something like this, and then say another one on the other side, right? So this piece would go in, right? And then the female part would have a path, right? That ends maybe here with this part again. So you would have, this would take me time if you get what I'm saying, like a key pop-in joint, yes, right? So the opposite end of this, right? Let's append another cylinder. And let's come out of solo mode, right? So this would be in like here, right? So you would have an opening that this piece would go in, and then it allowed turning, but you wouldn't do 360 degrees, right? You'd only have a little bit of turning in there. And then at the end of that part where it stops turning, you would have the opening to fit this little peg, right? And then that way it pops in, and then that way you wouldn't be able to turn unless you push the piece that I have right now in a little bit. And then I'm sure you guys have seen this on things. Like appliances, like vacuums do this a lot. They'll put stuff in, and you turn it, and then and then it sits, and then you turn it again and pop it out. That kind of thing is what I would do if I'm trying to get the thing in and out. I'd probably go more that route. than doing the other one that I showed, in all honesty. Okay? I'd have to take some time to put it all together for you, but did that answer your question? Right, so let's keep going here. Let's keep going with some more questions. Again, I'm here to show you guys some things in ZBrush. We're gonna go on a few tangents like we just did and have some tangent alerts. Woo! Tangent alert. Right? But I have some pre-prepped questions I came through, and now that I've been doing these streams, I'm seeing some of you are actually setting questions to me onto Twitter. So again, I go to our Twitter account and I look for just one hashtag. I look for the hashtag AskZBrush, and then I bring some of those questions in and start answering them here in this stream. And then whatever you guys throw at me while we're live, we try to get as many of those answered as well. Okay, so one of the ones that I want to answer is this one. How can you save out on a mask on a model? Okay, the IR sculpts. You're very kind, but very kind of you. Thank you, but no. I wish. So there is 2 ways I can show you to do this. Okay, so I'm assuming you're wanting to recall a mask. Obviously, is nice benefit to have this. So let me show you 2 ways to go about this, and you guys decide, depending on your workflow and what you're trying to do, you go that route. Okay, and again, I like to show as many ways as possible. Number 1, it just shows the ability of ZBrush, the way that we can go. And then number 2, one way might work well for one particular model, but not for another. In fact, it just happened to me last night. I was working on a piece, and there was techniques of making some scribe lines that I showed last stream. I showed 5 different ways. Really, only one of the way was the best way for me than the piece I was trying to make that I was working on last night. Okay, so that's why I like to show multiple ways. Okay, so the first one is the easiest one as far as it goes. You can just use layers. Layers are going to store 3 things. They're going to store any sculpting change, any poly paint change, and any masking. Okay, so if I put a layer in record mode, right, it's in record mode now. So this mask, okay, is getting saved in the actual layer itself, right? So especially if you're trying, in essence, if you're trying to do a mask too where you're working on something where you wanted some details and stuff, so I'm sculpting like this, and then, you know, when I come out of record mode, you see the mask goes away, right? The sculpt stays because the layer's now just in on mode, it's not in record mode. If you now click to the left, right? So you see there's, in essence, 2 icons. There's the eyeball, and then there's a dot, right? The eyeball is just turning down the layers on and off. If you go back to the dot, you can see the mask comes back. So this would be one way, and then this, you can do this on multiple subdivisions as well. So you could do this with something that's, like I got 3 million with a couple subdivision levels. You can do something with 10 million polygons if you want to. You can do it 0 subdivision levels if you want to. You're only going to see the mask, though, in record mode. Okay? So this would be one way. So you're in record mode. If I click to the right, it'll switch to the eyeball, and then I can turn the eyeball on and off. If I want to go back in record mode, I can go back in record mode. Okay? So there you go. Okay, so that would be one way to go about doing this. I'm going to get rid of what I did there. The other way might give you guys even more flexibility and freedom, and I want to show you something else that also is beneficial going this way. Okay, the other way would be involving UVs. Okay, so this particular guy has UVs on him, right? So if I go to the UVs and hit morph UV, you can see he's got a UV. And let's not forget, you can paint, sculpt, and, right, do a mask in the morph UV mode, right? So I'm looked at the flat version. So if you especially are in UVs and you got like islands of stuff, you masks cross islands, which is really nice, okay? So this is going to allow you to do that, right? So this has got UVs on it. So what I can do now is if I want to have this stored, okay, we're painting on we're painting on vertex points, right? So this is painting, when we're doing this, we're masking on the actual points of vertex because we're a sculpting application. So we're trying to sculpt on this, but not in this area, right? So when I'm going through and sculpting here, right, I don't want that affected, or if I'm painting the same thing, okay? So because I have UVs on it, I can actually come down here and go to my texture map, and I can say new from masking. All right, and what that does is now picks up only the mask and stores it in a textured file. So obviously, because this is a texture, I can call this anytime I want, right? Is there any way to see? No. Anxious Dreamers, so you're asking, do you mean when you're saving on a file, like a ZTL or a project, you want it to save on the highest subdivision level, you mean? And Christopher, yes, you can make feathers with fiber mesh. There's a lot of great ways to do that. I got you guys questions coming through. I'll try and get to them all, okay? So let me just finish this one up. So now what I've done is I've got a texture, right, that has this information. Okay? So I can clone this, right? And then it'll actually make a texture over here. Right? So what is also can be beneficial for this, and this is also a little bit to one way a person's asking how to combine multiple masks. Okay? You can only have one texture loaded at a time, right? But what I can do is if I mask more, like say, okay, I bring this one in, and then I want to start masking some more. I'm going to turn on the anti-aliasing on this too. And say now I want to come in here and mask this pectoralis region in here on him. And now I want this mask also to be a part of this texture. Okay? So what I can do now is in masking, there's a menu here at the bottom called Apply. Right? And there's Make Mask Texture, Mask Alpha. If I have a brush, let's say like standard, you see Mask Alpha is not available. But right now I'm on a model that has a texture map on. So I can tell ZBrush, you know what? I want you, what's masked right now, I want you to add to the texture that I have right now. And you can see that's adding to the texture. Right? So this is how you can even add to an existing layout texture file. Like this isn't just only for just saving on a masking, but this is a way to do that. Okay? And if you noticed, what the texture file has in it is black and white. So pure black, okay, is the mask. So you can go about this another route then too. So this is showing a way is I can just make more masks and anytime add it to the existing texture that's been selected here in my model. And then obviously you can clone that one. And then now I've got this version and I've got this version, right? So if I turn this off and I clear my masks, okay, you're going to be like, well, how do I now get the mask back? Right? So because there's a texture here, right, that goes back now to, I can tell ZBrush, I want to mask by the color now. And in this case, I'm just going to mask by the intensity. And what it's doing is taking the pure black and making it a mask. Right? So this is a way for you guys to get your mask back. And if I don't want that one, clear my mask and go grab maybe the original one that I started with, this one. Right? And then I can say mask from intensity with that. And then there you go. So in essence, you can store your masks on like a texture file, bring any one of those in, and reapply it at any time. And it's the thought process of doing that. With that said, you guys can also use polypaint to create masks as well. Go the opposite direction, right? I've been using maskings to create the texture because I've got painting ability too. If I fill this model, okay, so let's go to the paint brush and let's get rid of the paint here, polypaint. In fact, here, before I do that, let's create a texture map, okay, of his texture, okay? So that way I just have it. I want to have it, right? So Let's color fill with white. And now if I hit the V key as in victory, victorious. Okay, now you're painting, right, with black. Right? So I'm now just painting in black. And if I make a stronger focal shift, right, you'll get different things. So you guys got to think about this, even not just by painting by hand. You can bring in an image and apply it. And because now this is paint, you don't even have to have UVs in this sense. I can just come here and say mask by intensity, right? And what it's done is if we turn off the paint and switch it, we've made a mask now, right, from that paint. So this is another way to go about creating a mask from your model as well, okay? Is I'm going to apply just pure black off the white, and then whatever the pure black is, that's the only thing that's going to get masked. And then with ZBrush 2021.6.6, we improved this masking ability too when you're generating a mask to be even more accurate, especially when you're dealing with things like with extract and things like that. So there you go. And then not only that, if you guys have, if we take one of these textures, okay, and then I'm going to say, let's make it an alpha. Right? So now this is an actual alpha that's on the brush, right? So I'm going to be painting with that alpha now. But you also have the ability, again, this masking in the apply area, you can see now mask alpha is available. So this is how you can even add to, maybe you got brushes with alphas on them, you can add even more a part of your alpha to a brush as well. Okay, so in this case, I have this and I can say, all right, for the time being, let me just, I don't know, let's add something a little that is visually we're going to be able to see a little bit better. So let's just add an arrow here, right, on his shoulder. Okay, so if I throw this alpha back on, and let's say this is an alpha that's for this brush now, I can mask alpha, right, and it just added the arrow to the alpha. So it's not just about taking and adding to the texture in this case and saving out your textures. You can also add it to your alpha. And then now I've just shown you guys, you can just literally just paint and have that paint also be there. Okay, and then don't forget, you can add paint to a layer. So technically you could add multiple mask layer kind of things like that. Like these are going to be the ways that you'd be able to combine and play with some masking. Right? Because we have to clear the mask at some point. Okay, because you guys are going to want to divide up. So we can't just keep the mask on the model. Because you got to walk down subdivision, walk up subdivision levels, right? Which is fine. But then you also are going to want to start dividing up. So we can't just keep the masks on the model. So this is a way that you guys can go about storing. So hopefully that helps. Let me go back now to a question that was... So hopefully, Taka, that's helps answer your question. Osmose, I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. So you want a shortcut to this? See-through, right? So, I don't know, let's just put 9 at it. Okay? So this has now got the number 9. So I can be anywhere and hit the 9 and I get see-through. So that's creating a shortcut for see-through, but this is the same for any slider and any button inside of ZBrush. All you have to do is hover over the button or the slider that you want to create a hotkey for or change the hotkey for, okay? Hold down Control and Alt, and then just tap on the button. And then you're going to see in the top of my UI, okay? And here, if we readjust my camera, I know, I forget that. It's too small right now. I shouldn't have touched it. I've ruined my shot, Mr. DeVoe. Right? There you go. Up. Let me straighten me out now. Okay, there you go. So, right up here in the top, this area up here, it's telling you, hey, pick something now. So, Control, Alt, tap, and then now just whatever you want. I'll do 0 this time. And then say, hey, 0 already exists somewhere else. We're going to override that. Okay, override it. And then now you can see 0 is my hotkey. Okay? So that's how easy it is to create a hotkey for that for you. Okay? So, Alex, how do you fix it automatically? How do you fix what? What happens when you export or import UV models and all the edges turn to seams? Oh, okay. So if you're I think I know what you're running into. So what you want to do if we have a texture on here like this, hit this button right here, fix seams. So if you're importing an image and then you're seeing like, because you got multiple islands on the one subtool, and maybe you're seeing like a little bit of a line, like dark line from the background that's not the painted, just click this fix seam button and that should solve your problem. I'm assuming that's what your question you're asking, Alex, is that you're bringing in a texture UV and it's got multiple islands and you're seeing a little black lines or something where it looks like the seams. Do that, and then that should solve your problem. Okay? That's what you were looking for, right, Alex? Hopefully. And then to Christopher, to your question about feathers, I have shown this in a stream before. Couldn't tell you what stream now. It's all a big blur to me now. But yeah, you can make feathers. You can go multiple ways of making feathers. So if I mask something out like this, and you're wanting to use fiber mesh to make feathers, there's 100%. There's more than one way to even do this, actually. Okay. Alex, I would need to see what you're talking about. I don't know what you're referring to with white seams. I would need to see. So the best thing would be to send in a ticket to our support site, support.pixologic.com, so that we can see. So go to our support.pixologic.com so we can see what you're talking about. I don't know what you're referring to. Okay. So, okay, so to your fiber mesh question, yeah, if we turn on our previews, okay, the number one thing I would tell you to do is drop your fiber max way down. Like, go to 500, like 0.5, right? So you can just have way less fibers, number one, okay? So this is now what our fibers are looking like, right? They look more like he's got a serious hair growing problem here, right? So I'm going to hide my mask so we can really see what this looks. So my mask is actually still there. So again, you guys can see my shortcuts in the stream itself in the bottom left corner. I'm using Control H. So keep an eye on there if you guys want to see the shortcuts I'm using. And again, just fire away at me if you're not sure what I did and how I did something. All right, so this is a feather. Like this looks more like hair, right? And that he's losing hair on the shoulder, okay? So number one, I would want to make a bigger coverage. I would want the hair to not be hairs. I want it to be wider like a feather, right? So I would up this coverage so we just get a wider look, right? This is already starting to give a little bit more feather-like. And let's make the colors a little bit brighter here. And let's make the tip a different color. There you go. Okay, so what I want to do is even maybe make more coverage or more width and even play with that. So there's a curve here that's going to allow me to adjust, and I can make the root obviously bigger. So this is my root. So I'd probably want the root actually smaller because I want it to taper, right? And I probably also want the tip to taper. But what I want to have happen is a little bit wider in the middle, right? So I want to start playing with this and doing something like this. So you can see it's looking kind of funny right now. And it's because right now, every feather that we have here right now, this is only got 3 polygons per feather. That's not enough. It's just like if you're sculpting, like if I'm sculpting this guy, and when I get to the point where I want to start putting like these veins and putting some of the skin pores in, you need more geometry to do that, right? So it's the same thing with this. So at the very bottom of this menu, there are 2 sliders. There's profile and there's segments. Okay, so what I need are more segments so I can stretch that out over more, right? So I can get more segments here. And here, I'm going to turn the twist off. And you can see we start getting something that has a little bit more of a different shape. And then I can start playing with this a little bit more. Maybe add another dot in there, right? Start playing with that taper a little bit. And then this also has a tapering here. See, there's a scale root, scale tip, right? So maybe I want to scale that, and then see, here's the tip. You'll be able to see it. See what it's doing? It's the last polygon. So then I can taper that down a little bit more. And it's only messing with the last polygon taper, right? So you can get something like this. And then obviously I'd probably want to do more length to start making it feel a little bit more like a feather-like. Okay? So you can just use this graph, right? And you just have the right length. You've got the right amount of segments, right? i.e. right number of polygons. Okay? And then obviously you can then obviously texture this, right? And you can start making it look a little more feather-like. Right? Now, this is just one way to go about this, of course. Okay? The other way that, since we have this, let's grab, hold on, let me, since we're asking, hold on, I gotta get on that handy dandy web. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I'm gonna find something. Obviously I wasn't prepared for this question. So let me find something. So what I'm going to do is literally take kind of what we were already talking about with the masking. Okay? Having the understanding of ZBrush and knowing that pure black and pure white are a driving force inside of ZBrush. Okay? And I'm just grabbing something here and hoping for the best. Here, let's see. Yeah. Okay, let's save this image. Put this in the downloads. We'll just keep it the crazy name. Forget it. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to bring in an image that I just grabbed off the internet here. Okay, real fast. So downloads. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so I have an image here, okay, in my texture that's a black and white. You can see it's black and white. Okay, and if you guys remember, pure black in ZBrush, just like we were doing pure black, it's masking. It's also the transparency driver. Okay, so if I come down here now and I add this, okay, I can do this kind of thing, right? And I'll throw in an anti-aliasing as well. And then there's a transparency slider. And you can see once I turn this slider on, the pure black is gone. And what I'm left with, in essence, excuse me, in this case, is a feather. And then this feather texture is being applied across the whole feather, right? So this is a way you can use, in essence, an image. And obviously the best way to go about this would, instead of having a black and white, you would have a colored feather, right? And then the background's pure black. And then what you'd be left with is a colored feather. Like, so if we can find here, let me see if I can find something again really quick. Color. Again, I'm just throwing in the dark. Let's see what we find. This is the beauty of this. This is actually what I like about streaming. We get a little crazy. I'm just seeing if I can find maybe a quick image that can give us a little bit of what you're thinking here. Okay, here. What about this one? Let's try it. I don't know how well this will be. Is this a JPEG? Okay, this is a JPEG. Okay, let's import this one. Let's import this one. Okay, and then now you can click. And again, you don't have to import from there. There's an import right there. Can you? Wait, hold on. I don't think you guys are going to be able to see that. Hold on. Let me look at my stream. Yeah, you guys can't see that. Hold on. Let me move this up more. There you go. So there's an import right there, right? This is in essence opening up the texture palette is what it's doing. Right? And then I can grab the colored version. And then this is asking me, do I want to resize the image? Okay, so there's an image slider right here. See, it says map size. It's grayed out right now because I have an image in here. So if you say yes, we are going to resize your image to be a perfect square, pixel-wise, based upon what this slider says. So I'm going to say no because I don't want it to be resized at all. Okay, so here, if I turn off the image, so you see this? You can go up to 256 by 256. So this is defaulted at 128. So when you guys are adding an image and it's asking you, hey, the image is larger than the slider set to, do you want me just to adjust the image to fit 128 by 128 pixels or no? So I'm saying no, right? And then I like to throw in an anti-alias and then now throw in your transparency. And again, this is why it's a slider. And then now you've got those feathers. And then to your question, yeah, you just add more mask, right? At any time, wherever you want feathers, you just add more mask. And now just turn this back on and you get the feathers wherever the mask is. Okay? It's that easy. Now, the other cool thing about this as well, okay, speaking of feathers, right? Let's make a quick little mask like this. Let's go ahead and preview those. And this time, I'm going to accept. And what it's done is turn these feathers into an actual subtool and it's selected them. So these feathers are now a subtool. They're already UV'd because we put a texture on them. If you guys forget to put a texture on them and you want to put a texture on this, so for example, here you can see it's UV, so I'm going to delete my UVs. Right? So now I can't put a texture on this. Right? I can. All I need to do is go back to UV map. And right here there's a button called Fiber UV. And then bingo. Right? So this is reapplying the texture. Then when you created it, we automatically put the texture from the fiber mesh and put it in your texture map. So even if you guys make fiber meshes and you forget to do the UV part so you can apply a texture, you can do it after the fact. As long this is one of these and one of these. Look up here. Look at me. As long as you don't break the internal subtool code of this being a fiber. So things like dividing up, splitting it off into separate subtools, you'll lose, in essence, the code that tells ZBrush this is actually a fiber mesh. Because then there's things that you can do extra with this. We're tagging this so that you can use fiber mesh brushes. You can do that in the UV. You can click this one button that says fiber UV. People, there's even things in masking just for fibers. Like there's a bunch of other things all over ZBrush that if you made fibers that we can do. And one of the other things that we can do and that I really love about fibers is this. So let's turn that off and let's turn off the paint so we're not looking at it black, okay? So say we got something like this. I'm gonna readjust this so I can get this back. Let me get my Cintiq back in front of me. All right, get my pen. All right, so you can also, let's go and grab a sphere as an example. Perfect. Make that a polymesh. I'm going to go ahead and make this a dynamesh as well. I'm going to go relatively low. I don't need a lot of resolution. Okay, and then now I'm just going to, let's move symmetry and say something like this. Dynamesh, something like that. And then goes to a little bit of a tip there. Something like that. Okay. Then I like to use Mr. Handy Dandy Deformer. I'm going to make it symmetrical with the red cone. So me grabbing this red cone is telling ZBrush this deformer is symmetrical. This has nothing to do with the symmetry, sculpting symmetry, or the world symmetry or anything like that. Okay? This is just doing that. Okay? And Wintry Snowman, I'll show you something with Morph Target actually with fiber mesh, which is awesome. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple more points in here. And then now let's go ahead and start adjusting this some more. So hold control and look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm not holding the keyboard. Just going to hold only the Alt key. All the white dots are masked, but this one. And then now I'm just going to start shaping this a little bit more. So it definitely needs to pinch in. Then in here, something like that. And then maybe these, you want them to maybe come out a little bit more. Okay, now we got something like this. And, okay, and then now let's go ahead and let's bring this in more. Let's bring this in more. Okay, let's just say something like that, and we'll redynamize. Okay, good enough. Okay, now, this is sitting at about 21,000 polygons. That's not crazy. It's not like, oh no, that's crazy, right? It's making me now. Now that you guys got, I'm looking at this, and then I want to start doing this kind of stuff. Like, this isn't it. You'll get the idea. I'm going really fast here, just for you to get kind of to that question that you're asking. Right? Just quickly putting some kind of sculpted element together here. Yeah, good enough. Okay. So again, this is around 20,000. Now it's 22,000 polygons. Okay. So what I would do is remesh this. My goal would be to get this at a lower level. Okay. So I would probably go to this target polygon count, and I'd drop this down to like 0.2, which is like 200, and then remesh this and see what we get. Okay, because I'm going to reuse this feather multiple times. And to your question is, the idea here then would be you would want to sculpt multiple versions of this feather. Okay? And I want a little bit more topology, I guess. We'll give it 1,000 polygons. So, back to this. You want to sculpt maybe like, like 10 feathers or 12 feathers or whatever. How many feathers you want. Okay, you'd want to sculpt a bunch of different variations of this feather, right? So now it's 2,200. That's a lot better, or 2,266. That's a ton better than 22,000 polygons, okay? And now what I can do is go back to the feathers that are a subtool, right? We converted these fiber meshes, okay? They are an actual physical mesh that we can grab our grooming brushes now, right? I can do hair toss, and I can groom these and move them. And this is the benefit. They're not coming off the model, right? That's kind of why they're tagged feathers, just to break them up a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is, here, let's make this a little bit darker so we can see this. Not hot pink. Okay, I'm going to tell ZBrush, all right, let's go and let's modify this topology. I want to change what this topology is doing right now. Right now, it's just this. It's just every single feather's got the same polygon count. It's got tapering. There's variations in there. What I'm going to do is come to modify our topology, and I'm going to micro mesh this. And what I want to do is I want to select the feather that I actually sculpted. Okay, and when I click on this, it's going to tell you, hey, this is like a rendering feature because you're doing this on fiber mesh. So, hey, you need to go turn on draw micro mesh. Okay, so in the render palette, okay, when you're doing your render properties, you need to turn this on right here, draw micro mesh. And you'll see this kind of got little white dots all over it now. What's happening is the feathers now that I sculpted is being used on the model. So the only thing I got to worry about now is its orientation of the feather. Okay, so to see that, number one, you would see the feather on this. So the orientation I have isn't working right now. Okay, but you can render now. Wait, and in fact, this render's got, we don't need SSS, we need max previews. Perfect. And let's look at our shadows. Okay, for sake of time, we don't need all that turned up. Okay, so when you go to render in ZBrush, okay, which is BPR, you can see what's happening. It's actually taking the mesh, right, that I sculpted and giving that to me now stretched across the feathers. So this is why I'm saying you can sculpt various types of different feathers and then sculpt across it. Now, this at render time, the fiber meshes are also doing something at render time. So this is, people, this is a big time. This is an inception, okay? This is definitely an inception, okay? Lisa needs braces moment. And all of it together, okay? So we're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit. We have now, think about it. We started with fiber mesh. We converted the fiber mesh into real topology. I sculpted a mesh, and I'm replacing it now along the fiber mesh, but at render time. So then what's happening at render time is, because this is still tagged as a fiber mesh actually, is what's allowing me to do this micro mesh thing. And down here at the bottom, there are settings, okay, that you can do. And there are BPR settings. And you can see this particular fiber mesh, when you go to render, we're telling it to subdivide twice. We're telling it to have 4 sides. And there's a certain radius. So I can actually turn the subdivision levels off. And then when I go to re-render this, it's not going to divide twice. So in essence, it's not going to give me as much of the smoothness that I was necessarily getting. Okay? So this is important to understand when you guys are also going to use fiber mesh. If you're not using it with micro mesh too, you got to go and change these settings as well. I'm not adjusting anything normals for the render. So what we're doing is we have tagged, this is a ZBrush feature. We've tagged these fiber meshes, right, as fiber mesh. And when we're putting a micro mesh over it, we're replacing, in essence, this geometry with the sculpted geometry. Now, if you guys want this and you're saying, okay, I don't want this to be a fiber mesh anymore, just give me the feathers now. You hit this button right here, convert BPR to Geo. And what we do is actually convert the fiber mesh into the real feathers now that you sculpted. Okay? And then there you have it. So now these are converted. So see, I'm at 1.1 million now, right? And this is why I'm saying why I Z-remeshed it, because I want this to be as low as I can, because look at all the feathers that I have, right? So this is a great way maybe to do stuff, you know, even for 3D printing, right? If you make it a thicker, you would have it overlapping pretty well, and you can create like, you know, like a Viking, you know, like fur type of thing. This is would be a great way to go about that. Okay, so this is just combining now multiple features, layering one feature over another one. Okay, how do you convert it? It's really easy. You just go to modify topology. This is just an on and off state, so it's off. You click it and grab anything. I can grab this helix, right? And then this is a render thing. So when I shift R to render, we're not going to show you the feathers anymore. We're going to show you the spiral that I just added, the helix, being applied to the feather. And it's being applied across the whole feather. That's it. And then if you want to change it, you turn it off, turn it back on, grab something else. Here, we want an arrow. For whatever reason, you can do that. And then now you've got arrows stretching across. Right? And what you're giving it's important. Like, the arrow I'm giving it right now is very low polygon, and that's being stretched across this fiber. So that's why I'm getting the result that I'm getting. What I'm throwing at it matters. Okay? So to your other question about the morph target, someone asked about the morph target ability. Okay, here's one thing that I really love about morph targets, especially with fiber mesh. Okay? So if I store a morph target for him, which he already has one, so we're going to get rid of the one that we has. I'm going to store it at the top of my mesh. Then I'm going to come here and do my clay buildup and say, all right, let's sculpt up some, let's give him a little bit of that, and then in there, right, something like this, okay, and let's go to move now, let's just really pull that out, maybe do something like that, okay, and I'm going to turn off RGB smoothing, just so I don't smooth the paint. I'm only smoothing the model. Let's do something like that, and then let's go over here now and say, let's just give it a little sculpting bumping in here. This is gonna be great. I'm laughing because I know where I'm going with this, so you'll see. You'll see here in a little bit. Okay, good enough. I can't wait to see this. All right, so what we have here is I've got 2 sculpted versions. It is beautiful, right? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this. And now what we have back is the original sculpt. Okay? And what I can do now is tell ZBrush, let's go ahead and make feathers again. Okay? So we want to go in our fiber mesh. Okay, and now I'm going to preview, and now we're just going to get those feathers, right? And they're stretched across his whole body. Here, we'll give you us more. Yes. He's peacocking now. He's a peacock guy, right? So because there's no mask, it's being stretched across the entire model, right? So the whole model is going across there. So what I'm going to tell ZBrush to do is, no. I want you to actually take the morph target. So there's a button right here, morph target guided, and now what it does is takes the fiber mesh and only puts them where I sculpted, right? So wherever I sculpted more and pulled on more of the actual polygons, that feather is getting longer, right? And where I barely sculpted, they're smaller. So that is controlling some variation for you. And to the question that came through the variations, yes, that's what all these little sliders right here, these are all variation sliders. So everything can be have a variation inside of it. Even masking is giving you your variation. Wherever there's, excuse me, 100% mask, then you're going to have, okay, the longest, biggest fibers. Where there's less masking, smaller fibers. Okay? So again, I use the morph target to sculpt where I want these. So as an example, right, let's do something a little bit more maybe. So let's delete store, and let's say I want feathers on his shoulders, right? So I can actually just sculpt and say, okay, I want the feathers to go there, and then I'm going to go a little bit lighter here. So the feathers will actually get a little bit smaller there. And then let's go back to bigger. Let's put some more sculpting in here. Right? And do a little bit of that, a little bit of that. And then I'm going to go a little bit lighter and smaller through here. Okay? And now if I switch this, and we go back once again, turn on our preview, and then turn on morph target guide, you can see the feathers are only going there. Right? And then I can continue adjusting things. The only thing I can't adjust is the length. The length is being controlled by how far I put the polygons. Okay, and if you want the feathers the same size, you got to get rid of all the variations now that are on. There's by mask variation, there's by a polygon size variation, right? So there's a ton of variations on purpose, right? So you got to have this all be 1. You would want that to be 1. You want all these sliders probably to be 0. So any variations, you'd want all those to be 0 wherever you can, right? And then you can say, you can turn off by mask area, you can turn off by polygon area, right? And now all these, right? These are variation sliders. This is having a variation based upon the polygon size. That's what this slider's doing. This is having a variation based upon the masking. Okay? That's what this slider does. And then all the little sliders here are variations. Like, so all this stuff. But then with this technique, the sculpt is also the variation. I can't do anything about that. Right? So all the little ones I'm getting right now is because that's where I barely sculpt. Where I sculpted the most was right here. Right? And then, of course, fiber mesh it's just real geometry. So if you want to convert it, again, you just hit accept, and now it's real geometry. Like, this is real geometry now. Okay, and I put preview on. Right? This is geometry. You're not going to sculpt on this, though, because it's super low. It's 70,000 polygons, but you guys, there's hundreds, if not thousands of fibers here. Right? So you're not going to sculpt on this. Okay, you don't need to sculpt on it. You want to keep it low like this. And then that why is when you switch to grooming brushes, it makes it easier to groom them, right? And move it around. You don't want this to be super dense. I need to turn off the texture for now, right? You want this to be, let's turn off the paint too. You want them to be low so you can do adjustments like this. So you can make some adjustments where you want adjustments to have happening to your feathers. Okay. Okay, cool. That should answer all those. It's a feather wiggle is right. Hold on, I'm just catching up. You guys were firing stuff at me. Yes, I'll get to the picker. Okay, variation feathers. We answered. Sarah's food and crafts. ZBrush is. We covered this a little bit. You might have missed it, but ZBrush wasn't. Its conception was building an artistic. It wasn't built from the ground of this is going to be used in production, making something physically in the world. It's just now we've added so much stuff, so you can have it. I started this stream with measurement system. So I don't know, Sarah, if you were in the beginning of the stream. Whoops. I would probably watch the beginning of the stream where I show a plugin. I show the plugin Scale Master. So I'd recommend going back and watching this stream. This is how you can start doing all your measurement stuff. Okay. So I would recommend going back and watching that again. Okay. All right. So I think I caught up on all the feather stuff. Okay, so Jared Krzyzewski, great. Thank you for bringing this up, buddy. Okay, so here's the thing. Jared's bringing up such a great question. If you're an artist like him that's throwing this stuff into Keyshot, there is some variables here that you need to understand. This is 100%. Look up here. Look at me. Look at me. Now that you're awake and you're loud, and I'm sorry, I'm loud and obnoxious. I just like it, people. It's in my vocabulary. I have to do it. All right, so this is extremely important. Extremely important sending this to Keyshot. Okay, because right now, you guys are looking at polygons that are quadded, right? They're quads. So this is 70,000. Keyshot doesn't do quads. It does triangles. So already, you guys got to double that number for this mesh in Keyshot. So this mesh is going to be 140,000 triangles now, like that. In Keyshot. However, what also is happening, let's not forget what I showed you. Every fiber mesh by default has BPR settings, and by default it's subdividing twice and doing 4 sides. So Jared, to your question, here's the crazy math now, right? So just this scenario alone, if I was to send this to Keyshot, right? In Keyshot, so we're sitting at, let's just keep it round numbers. Let's put 70,000. Okay, so I'm dividing that twice. So times 4 times 4. So that's 1.1 million times another 4 because it's 4 sides. Now I'm at 4.4 million times triangles 2. So this mesh in Keyshot is going to be almost 9 million polygons. This one mesh that's 70,000 in ZBrush, it's going to be almost close to 9 million in Keyshot. All right? So, Jared, what you're going to want to probably do, if you're going to throw this over to Keyshot, you're going to want to adjust these sliders right here. So, either A, get rid of the 4-sided. So, 4-sided means it's going to take this, and you guys will probably know in ZBrush. You can see all this in ZBrush before you send it over to Keyshot. Just render in ZBrush. And we're going to pull these sliders. So you can see it kind of has volume now. They're almost like bubbly in a way. It's because it's 4-sided now. It's, in essence, making cubed shapes. So if I knock this down to 2, right, it's back to being just flat plane, right? So see, now it's just a flat plane again. And then I'm also telling it to divide 2 more times. So maybe you only want to divide it once, not twice. Or maybe you don't even want to divide it at all, okay, when you're going to go to Keyshot. And then that right there is what you're going to get in Keyshot then. That, right? Because now I've turned off subdivisions completely. So now what's going to go over to Keyshot is only 140,000 polygons instead of 9 million. Guys, that's a big swing. This is a great question from Jared. That's not tiny. That's ginormous. Okay? So there you go. Because we are automatically, with the Keyshot bridge, we're doing everything for you. So even though at render time this is being applied, well, you're sending it over to a renderer. We apply these for you, just like we automatically apply surface noise, dynamic subdivs, array meshes, nano meshes. The only thing we don't automatically apply for you to send to Keyshot is live booleans. And it's because they don't have live booleans. Okay, so I'm assuming, Jared, this probably will save your life on a bunch of projects that you've been using FiberMesh. See, Jared's been decimating his fibers, right? Because he's been sending them over, and like these are crazy amount of polygons inside of Keyshot. Right? Okay, there you go. Great question, Jared. Thanks for asking that. That's a big one for everybody. People, that's a really important one. Jared could probably tell you, since he was asking it, how important that is to understand that, right? Okay, let's move on to another question here that came through the wire. I'm going to start calling it the wire. Again, this is coming through our Twitter feed, hashtag Ask ZBrush. So you can see in the bottom of my title, this is a live Ask ZBrush that we're doing. Okay, so here's another question. Is there a way to make Sculptris Pro Tessimation not linked to the brush size? I actually pulled this one. The answer to this is literally 1 second. Okay, it literally is 1 second to change this. But for those that know me, I'm not going to just spend 1 second on this, right? I want to show you more information on this because I want you guys to have as much information as I do about ZBrush, if not more. I want you guys to be, listen, you're all probably better sculptors than I am, so let's get you as much information as we can about ZBrush. So they're asking because when we're using, let's say, something very extreme, let's use like snake hook, right? When we're pulling on this, right, this is what we're getting. Okay? So when you turn on Sculptris Pro, we're automatically tessellating for you, right? And we're doing this. So, but so we'll do this. We'll keep that there, right? And also, people, listen, don't forget about when you're smoothing, let go of the shift key. Look at my hand. And we'll inflate that, right? So this is how I kind of add like volume to stuff that's really been pulled out a lot. So like, see how it's really, see if you do this, see how it's getting very thin like that? If you're holding shift key and you start doing this and let go of the shift key, it'll inflate a little bit. You can get some volume back that way. All right, I'm assuming this person's asking the question more for something like, okay, like I want to use something like the Damien Standard, right? And I want a big cut into this face. But the quality of the cut is not what I want, right? So what they want is probably, if we go to a smaller brush size, I want a clean cut like that. The problem is that cut's too tiny now. So the quality of the cut is being controlled by our brush size, but then I want to use the brush size to get a bigger cut into the surface, right? I want a bigger cut like that into the surface, not that. So how do I get this quality with this cut into the surface? Okay? This is pretty easy. Okay? So what I would do is, can you turn insert? Okay, so what I would do is this. This is how easy this is. There are multiple locations for Sculptris Pro, actually, and that's why I wanted to answer this question. So the most important one first is in the stroke menu. That's where Sculptris Pro actually lives. That's where this button lives, turning Sculptris Pro on and off. You can see it right there. So if you do not, I repeat, do not, okay, Lisa needs braces moment, do not want the brush size to control the tessellation. All you need to do is turn off adaptive size. That's it. Okay? And now what it's going to use only is that slider right there. So with this large brush size, if I do this, see how it's really tessellated now, right? And if I go even small now, okay, I still get a lot of tessellation. Because now this slider, because this is up, this needs to be dropped a lot further. And then the further and further, right, the smaller I go here, you can see your quality is going to keep getting better and better and better, right? And then now if I go with a bigger brush size, see, I can get now bigger strokes with cleaner quality. So in essence, I'm telling ZBrush to ignore the brush size for Damien Standard. But if I switch to clay buildup, we're back to the clay buildup, right? What do I want controlling this tessellation, right? So this is a global setting now. Okay? What if I don't want it to be global? It's hard to read your question that says, okay, that's huge for me. I can't, it's the blue on the blue I can't read. I can't make out your name, sorry. But I'm glad this is helping. So, this is a global setting. What if you don't want that? Like, for example, for me, I don't like, personally, having Sculptris Pro on H polish. Okay? So I love this brush. I use this for a lot of hard surface stuff. And if I want to like come in here, it's just, it works slower. because now it's trying to tessellate at the same time. I prefer to have this off. So you need to have this, you need to have this, guy. You need to have this power, people. And we've coded it to have this power. So this is why I kind of wanted to spend a moment with this, because you got to realize what I've just did here is a global setting. Okay, so by default, this will be on and this will be to 1. Okay, so this is controlling tessellating. This is controlling decimating. So our Sculptris Pro doesn't just add polygons, it actually takes them away as well. Okay, so what I mean by that is if we come back here, all right, and we start adding, so watch my numbers up here, right here. So you see we're sitting at 281,000 polygons, right? So watch, if I'm doing sculpt there, let's go with a better brush than this. Let's go with this. Okay? See, I'm adding, right? If I just keep sculpting, okay, my pen's still down. See, I just keep adding and adding and adding and adding and adding, right? This is something that's unique to our dynamic tessellation. So you see it's at 317. If I pick my hand up, look. Guys, we just dropped, what was that? 28,000 polygons. That's not small potatoes again. That's big. So you guys may have never noticed this, but when you guys are doing this, we are actually adding tessellation and then taking it away where it's not needed. So we're decimating and tessimating at the same time. So that's why there are that's why there's 2 sliders here. This is your undividing. So the bigger it is, the more polygons it's taken away, the smaller or less it is, right? And then that's what this combined option is doing. That's literally telling, if I turn this off now and I do this, right, you'll notice the polygon count now is not going to drop. See? It's actually adding, right? Compared to now, if I turn the combined back on, right? That's a big swing. Like doing this, look, what am I at? So you see 332,000 polygons let go, 316. Wow, that's a lot. That's quite a bit, right? So our dynamic tessellation Sculptris Pro mode, and this is why this is different than the original even. It's not Sculptris that we just took and threw it in here. Okay, now, back to my thing that I don't like having H-Polish have Sculptris Pro on it, right? And let's say now you're the user that wants to have this adaptive size, and then you want this way down, something like this, right? This is a global setting, right? So now this is globally giving me this. And then when I switch to H-Polish, it's the same thing. And if you look, whoops, it'd help if I switch to H-Polish. When I'm doing this, right, it's flattening, flank. You see how slow it is? But now also look at all the tessellation that's also being added, right? That's a lot of tessellation. So what I can do is come over near a brush and say, okay, for this particular brush, ignore the global setting in the stroke. The stroke, Sculptris Pro is global. Now I want to go to an individual base. So right in here, we have Sculptris Pro, and you can see there's all the same options, okay? And so now what I want to do is tell it, do I want to enable it? No. So now this brush is going to work more the way I see. Like, see how much faster, like that's how much faster that is. See, this is why I prefer, me personally, this is a personal preference, I don't like to have Sculptris Pro on H-Polish, because this is, I like doing this kind of stuff. And that's working way faster than if I controlled, okay, that. So that's way better to go. So you have this setting ability, okay? And you can even switch to, let's switch to the standard brush. You can even say, not only do we have the scenario, we'll have one brush doesn't even use Sculptris Pro, but the rest of the brushes are. I can even say, you know what, for the standard brush, go back to having the adaptive size turned on. So in essence, this is now ignoring the stroke palette, but it's still got Sculptris Pro enabled. So this is back to the larger the brush size, the larger polygons you're going to get. The smaller the brush size, the smaller polygons you're going to get. Because now it's not looking at this anymore. It's looking at this because I've turned off the global. Okay? Does that make sense? There you go. So that's why I kind of wanted to pull this question, because it's really something that could go deeper and show you guys really the power of this. And one last thing that I want to show about this is we actually ripped Sculptris Pro out of this, in essence, the brush system per se. And we all use Dynamesh a lot, but guys, don't forget about Sculptris Pro, okay? Don't forget you guys can also use Sculptris Pro across the entire mesh. And especially someone for me that's a 3D printing guy that loves the 3D print, Sculptris Pro is amazing for me to clean stuff up for printing, add more details, something that I've already engineered, it's already all done. I don't want to go all the way back to unengineering, okay? So this is something else you guys can do. In geometry, there's actually a menu called Tessimate. And what this pretty much is telling ZBrush to Sculptris Pro the entire mesh. So let's grab something with a little bit more substance. Here, let's grab this girl. Right, and let's divide her up so she's smooth, right? So this, okay, if you hit Tessimate, that's what we do. The entire thing gets triangulated, okay? And you can see I've lost a lot of her model. So unlike Dynamesh, where you got to keep changing the resolution and seeing what you get, you don't have to do that with Tessimate. All you got to do is adjust the slider, and we'll reevaluate, and you can see I'm bringing back more and more of the original sculpt. But what I'm bringing back is, besides the sculpt, is I'm bringing all tessellation. See, now it's dynamically finding where it needs to put smaller triangles, and you see it's even keeping quads now, where it can keep quads that aren't necessary to have triangles. So this is pretty great to have. Okay, so why am I bringing this up? Okay, I'll get to your mirrored symmetry in a second here. Okay, is when you guys are working with Sculptris Pro, right? I'm going to put this back to the defaults just because this is what I'm used to. I don't play much with that. So when I'm doing this, I'm sure you guys had times where even you've had hardly any, like you've had topology like that. Like it's just no point, not good, right? So this is a great example of, you know what I need in the eye area? I need more polygons. So I can just actually say I want in this area right here. So we'll just look at, I'm going to sculpt around in the eyelid here, and in here, and in here, and inverse this. You can actually tessimate just that section. Right? So you can see I'm adding more and more polygons to that. And then now this, you can see, has already now, this is what I had, and this is what I have now. So this is obviously going to be a better result for Sculptris Pro than going up in here even, right? Because now I've got more tessellation through here to start with my model. Okay, so that's kind of why I wanted to show this, and it's all part of the Sculptris Pro system, right? Which now you guys have Sculptris Pro not just in ZBrush, but you got it now in ZBrush Core, and it's even in pretty much, that's what ZBrush Core Mini is. It's Sculptris Pro, right? And then now, of course, we just added the ability, all the VDM brushes now, right, can have Sculptris Pro now as well. So when I'm pulling this out, right, I can get something that looks like that, or I drop my draw size a lot, and then when I'm pulling out, right, I get a lot more detail, right, because it's tessellating more, right? So we even have this ability, okay? So I think that takes care of that question, yes? Okay, to your mirroring symmetry question, you can only control the symmetry in two ways. But I would also ask 249L5040, I feel like I'm in a sci-fi movie right now, is what is it specifically you're trying to do? Are you trying to talk about mirroring for sculpting purposes? Because you can't adjust sculpting, we only do across the axes. You can't make a custom symmetry line. Like you can't say I want symmetry this way. You can't do that in ZBrush. It's only either up and down, left and right, front to back. That's it. So like if the model is turned like this, you're not going to be able to have symmetry. If that is that what you're asking? Or are you asking a different question where you're like, I'm going to turn off Sculptris Pro for now. Are you asking question more of, okay, I have, well, I don't want that. I don't want that. I have this, and now you want that on the other side because you forgot to have symmetry on. Okay? Or are you asking more, your model's here, and now you want to work symmetrically, and it's on, but nothing's happening on the other side. And this one's the case. This is an easy fix. This is, Jared's already thrown it up there for you guys. Local symmetry. Okay, and then now ZBrush will locally look at the mesh and not look at the center part of the origin. So ZBrush will either for symmetry look at the center of the world or the bounding box in the model. So local symmetry looks at the bounding box in the model. By default, it's going to look at the center of the world. Okay? So I don't know if that answers your questions. You reply with just S. So I don't know what that means. I'm not hip with all the quick things. So you have a question, is there a way to fade transparency? Yeah. With so you want to just only at render time though. Are you talking about you want the model to have transparency? That can only be done at render time. But you can use painting to do a transparency. So pure black is transparent, and every gray level below that is less transparent. If that's what you're asking, so like if we threw, but again, it's only going to happen at render time. Render time. Oh, I got a hiccup. So let me put this back. So if we do something like this, and let's take this model and say, okay, it's going to have, this is going to be some kind of space suit thing, right? Like this. And then now at render time, I need to see through this. I want to kind of have some transparency to it. Okay? You got to tell ZBrush you want this subtool to be transparent. So in the display properties, okay, there is a way to tell this to, when you render, be transparent. And then it's telling you, yes, I need to turn on that transparency option in your render menu. So in render properties, this needs to be turned on, which it's doing for you when I hit yes. Okay? And so when this is now going to render out, right, it renders transparent. Okay, but now it's doing multiple things for the... She looks so funny with the sculpted eyes. Okay, it's doing multiple things here. It's looking at the material attributes, and it's looking at the painting attributes. Okay? So the material has color information in it, right? And so does paint. It's also, a third thing, is looking at the normals themselves. Okay? So where the normals are sitting from the camera, it's less transparency and more transparency. So what's controlling that are our transparency options right here. So you have by color and you have reflect. So if you guys do something here, I'm just going to take it out of here. Let's go ahead and let's do this. And let's paint this one. Let's make this be black, pure black on the bottom. So RGB, color, fill object. Okay, and then let's go with like a mid-tone gray. And let's do this, inverse that. Color, fill object. Right, so now we got this. Let's go with a little bit brighter. So we'll put that at the top. Color, fill object. Okay, so we've got multiple tones in this now. Okay, so when you guys go to render this, right, there are other, now not just looking at normals, I can really tell ZBrush, look at the color as well, as much as you can, right? So I'm just going to dock our render palette over here now. Okay, so I can tell, no, turn up by color all the way. Like, so when I render out, really start looking at my colors. And you can now clearly see the variation in here, right? And if I turn off by normal, okay, and keep rendering at this, right? I want this factor to start looking at this. So then I can also up the factor of this even more, right? And you can see, you can start using the color information itself to do this. So it's a combination of by color and by the actual model itself and normal. So you have this ability to use the color information as well to help push the transparency. But it's also looking at the material, right? So probably like something like Skin Shade 4 would probably be a better example, right? And then now I can say, let's turn off by normal, right? So you can see there's different levels of transparency there. Dan, ZBrush only uses a CPU. We don't use any GPU. There's only one thing in ZBrush that uses GPU, and that's a plugin called Polygroup It. Everything else is CPU. So as far as rendering, that's it. Okay? So another question about the orientation options and just the picker menu. That is really important stuff for sure. Okay? It's going to affect the way the brushes work. It's all about the brush system, right? So if we'll grab something a little more extreme, like clay buildup here, and I need to go back here to this. Okay, so if I'm sculpting, this brush is constantly looking at the orientation of where the cursor is in the space of ZBrush. It's also looking constantly at the depth. Okay, and this is what all the picker is about. Right? So the picker is a driving force here for ZBrush. Okay? You've got source information, you've got orientation, you got depth, you've got color, you got material. So this is a whole slew of information in here. So really the important ones for sculpting specifically is your depth and your orientation are super important. So you can see this brush has continuous orientation and continuous depth. So that means as the brush is going across, it's constantly looking at where this orientation is in the environment, the world of ZBrush, and constantly looking at the depth of this. Okay? And then you guys can control this and have only one depth chosen. You can have even choose a depth if you want to, and the same thing. So if I do one Z, right? Now see, it's only got one depth. See? So you see, as I'm sculpting, it's not letting me, it's trying to push everything to the depth I started at, which is right here. Right? So when I click here, right, it's just looking at that depth. So if I try to sculpt over here, it can't, because this is the depth I've chosen for this brush. Okay? That's what these continuous do. Now continuous is allowing you guys to do this. So it's continuously look at the depth and keep evaluating it. Okay? So then this can be controlled. You can literally put a specific depth in the world for every brush to sit at if you want to. Okay? And that's pretty much what that is. The 1Z is in essence that normal. So it is the normal. So when I go to 1Z, whatever I'm clicking on here, that's the given depth. That's it. That normal that I clicked on, vertex, that is the depth of this brush now. It can't go, like if I come here, see, look, even if I try to come forward, it doesn't. See, I can't sculpt forward or back. So anything along that line that's in that same depth, right now, is going to give me that. Okay? So, and it's the same thing for orientation. Right? So I'm continuously want this brush to evaluate the orientation on the model. If I do once, right, it's not going to keep evaluating. So you can see it's building up differently. It's not building up the same. Especially when you start doing like this. See, it's kind of building up a little bit different because it's not continuously building on top of itself. Where you really see this is you can actually pick your orientation. So like if I did, like say, let's do an up arrow pen that looks like a pencil, right? Let's say up. So when I sculpt, you can even see, look at the cursor, right? It's pointing up. And so now any brush stroke I do, which this is could be some nice scaling or something, it's always going up, 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 right? It's always going in an up direction. That's it. So if I want this to always be forward, going forward, no matter where I am, if I'm here, see, it's pushing it forward. See, everything's coming forward. Right? So you can control. I can make it all go a different direction. I can make everything go one direction if I want to. Not the band. Right? So that's what these are. These are just saying you control, or only whatever I pick on, that's the defining orientation, or just constantly evaluate the surface. You pick the depth with the slider, okay? Or once, or continuous, and now we have closest and farthest as well now. Okay? Yes, your camera's going to play a role on this, because it's really more about the model facing the camera. Because ZBrush has to see a vertex point, right? Right now, it can't see the back of the head, so I can't sculpt on that. So that's really where the relevance is also coming into play, is where this model is sitting to the camera becomes important to you, because then those are the normals that you can click on. And then if you're going like this, and you're clicking on here, right? If I'm picking a point of orientation, see, it's coming forward, but you see what's coming forward based upon? That normal was looking at that camera angle, right? So you see it's kind of coming off. So if you wanted to really come forward off his head, I would want to look straight at the face and do something like this, and then you see it's shooting straight off his head. Okay? So there you go. There's that question answered for you. Hopefully, since you were here and you asked it, did that help? Okay. Let's see what we got here for time. Oh, okay, great. Okay, so let me answer MB artwork question. Can you please poly paint to texture, like your tutorials and understanding that? Okay, this is really easy. We're gonna go back to earthquake. Okay, this is not complicated at all for you. So he's already got UVs on him. Okay, so I'm gonna delete the UVs. In fact, let's start complete. Actually, I changed my mind. Let's start scratch. Let's just start with the demo. Let's just start with this guy. In fact, I want to get rid of all the settings in this project. Hold on, I don't want to have all the render settings in him. Okay, so you got a model, right? And then you've divided it up a bunch, and then you started switching and you've started doing paint, whether you're using Spotlight, whether you're using poly paint just by hand, whatever you're doing. Okay, I'm just gonna throw some paint on him. Let's give him some crazy lips. Let's give him some spooky clowning face here, right? So we got some paint. So now you need to get this to a texture, all right? This is all you have to do. There is more than one way to make UVs in ZBrush. So it's going to come down to, do you care what your UVs look like? If you care what your UVs look like, then I would use our plugin UV Master. If you don't care what your UVs look like, you're just trying to get them in and out of programs or something like that, then who cares? Then one of the best unwraps that we have is this PUV tiles. Okay, so what we're going to do, right, is I'll show you these, couple of these, so you guys get here. Okay? Hey, Morpheus. No worries about being late. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop to my lowest subdivision level. Okay, just so I'm at low polygons. And then I'm going to click AUV tile, which is adaptive tile. There, it's UV'd. That's it. Click that button, it's UV'd. So if we morph this out, whoop, let's turn off the this. This is what we get. And in fact, let's also turn off the bump so it stays flat. Okay? So this is AUV tile. This one's AUV tile. Okay? We'll unmorph that. Then there's a second option called GUV tile, which is group UVs. And we'll morph that one out. We're really making this look like a pattern now. And then there's PUVs. And now that's UV'd. And then now we'll morph that out. Okay? So let's just start with these three first. Okay. The importance here, if anything with UVing, which most of you probably in here know and understand, is UV space is king, right? We want to take advantage as much UV space as we can. Okay? So anywhere where there's empty space, we're losing quality, in essence, right? We're not taking full advantage of all the space that we have. This is why they did UDIMs, right? One map size wasn't enough to get crazy details in the film industry, specifically. And now the gaming industry's embraced it as well. So this, between the three, you got to look at which one's covering the most space. It's definitely not the middle one. It's definitely the two on the left and right. So AUV tile, all it's doing is literally taking every single polygon, cutting it out, and giving its own personal UV space, and keeping the gap between each one of them consistent and identical. So it is literally trying to use as much as possible as the UV space. That's what AUV is doing. GUV, or group UV, was, okay, I can't tell what anything is in here, right? I have no idea. It just looks like the imagination game. Turning. It's turning system, okay? This now started to group things, and I could kind of see where the reds were, or like the eyes with that blue. Like, okay, that's the eyes, that's the eyes, that's the eyes right there. Okay, but it was still, the problem we had is I can start seeing things, but it's still not perfect. And now I've lost the UV space being used to its fullest capability. So what we did is we combined these two to use PUV. So this is using as possible, as much as it can, UV space with no stretching, and grouping everything where it possibly could group things. So I can have a better visual understanding where certain things live. Now, this might have not been good enough for us all. So this is why we created the plugin, right? UV Master. And so for me, if you're going to use this, I always work on the clone, especially when I have something at subdivision level, sculpted, and got layers or whatever it is. Okay? I would say work on clone. And what that does is makes a copy of my model, right? So this has got a copy of my model. So if I want to, I can now just literally say unwrap. There. That has UVs. Well, what do those look like? Okay. This plugin has the ability to even look at flattened UVs. There's my UVs. So let's turn the floor grid off now. So now we've got this, right, as our UVs. The problem I have with this is, of course, I'm going to unflatten now, or if I look at the seams, they're going through the front of his face. So then, of course, what I'm going to do is enable control painting, and I want to protect, right, the front of this face. And let me put my focal shift back to 0, because I don't need it to be harsh. And I'm going to say I want the front of this face to be protected. Okay, this is important. I prefer, if you can, not have any seams go through his face. Okay, and then at the same token, I want to attract the seam. So I want to put a seam through here, right? And that's where I prefer the seam to go. And then now I unwrap. Okay, I've got it unwrap. And then now looking at this flattened, that is a lot better. Right? So now you look at all the variations now that I have. Okay, I'm now going to say, okay, let's take this. Let's copy the UVs because it's a clone. Let's go back over here to the original. Okay, and then this is sitting already on the lowest subdivision level. And now just paste your UVs. And then that's it. And so now when I morph this, let's do our morph, not a morph target. You can clearly see the face now in the UVs. Right? And so now, to make this a texture, it's all about, when you're making a texture, you want to be on the highest polygon level that you can. Because the quality you see here is what the quality is going to also go into the texture. Right? So, when you're doing new from Polypaint, this person also asked the question about the map size. So what's controlling the map size is in the UV maps, because that's where our map size are controlled. So here's your map size. We only go to 8K, so 8192 by 8192. So if I want a 2K map, I can click this preset. And then now when I say new from Polypaint, right, you can see when I scroll over it, it's a 2K. 2048 by 2048. If I go 1K and then new from Polypaint, see, it's 1K. Now, here's a pop quiz for everybody out there. And I've got some professionals in here. I don't even know if Jared's still in here, some other people. Guys, how do you know what map size to use? Like, what is the right map size? Okay, there are rules here. And this is so important for when you guys are going to go try and render in somewhere else. Especially when you want to go render in something like V-Ray, RenderMan, Arnold, something like that. This rules that I'm bringing up right now is super important. Because you're not going to get the quality unless you understand this. I don't care how far you push the renderer. If you do not understand these basic things that I'm about to share with you right now for rendering, you'll never get the render in those render packages that you're getting, the look in ZBrush, unless you follow this. Okay, so Alex, what do you mean by one-to-one? What one-to-one? What's one-to-one? Is my question for that. It's my turn. I'm flipping questions on you guys now. Okay, so what becomes really important, I think what Alex is going, he probably has the right answer, is there is a one-to-one, okay? So number one, there's a rule. Number one, the UV space is important. How much of the UV space? So the UVing that I have right now, everywhere you guys see black has not very good UV space, right? It's all empty. So we're wasted UV space right there. Okay? So that's why the PUV, AUVs exist, because they were taking the entire space. So honestly, for this model, if I don't care about seeing his face, I would not use this UV layout. I would use the PUV layout if I don't care, right? The second thing is the density of the UVs, which our plugin has a controller that you can actually paint density controls. So to enlarge or shrink in UV space. So obviously you guys are getting a point here where UV space is important. Okay, but let's say I am an artist that has this, and this is also what my boss told me. I want UVs like this, Paul. Come on, I need to see it. Here's the relationship you guys must understand. This, to me, it's everything. This is Inception. This is Lisa Needs Braces. This is Look Up Here. This is everything. This is where start of rendering begins, okay? It's number one is how many polygons do I have? So right now I've got a model at its highest level, right, is 3.6 million, right? And then this is my UV space, okay? So looking at the UV space and knowing the number of polygons that I have, that I'm pulling the paint from, what UV map size would you guys say would probably be the better UV map size to go with? Would I go with the 512 by 512, 1K, which is 1024, 2K, 2048, 4K, or up to 6K or 8K? What would be the best? This is where this is so important to understand. Okay, because what Alex had brought up, I'm assuming, is the one-to-one ratio is your map is holding information. It's holding not just paint, but you're going to hold displacement-ish, which is sculpting, right? You're going to hold normal mapping information, which in essence is holding the sculpt information in the map. That's what you guys are doing. You're taking the sculpt out from ZBrush and storing it on a map to get it in another application. Alex, which one? 1K or 2K? You threw the 1K and the 2K up there. Okay, so it's really important to understand this. This map, okay, host, easy way to put this, 1K would not be the answer. And honestly, neither would be 2K. Okay? The reason being I probably would not go 2K with this particular scenario is I've got about 3.6 million. Okay? 16K, I love it. You don't need that much. So every map size, to find out how many polygons of information it can host in a map, multiply the numbers. So 1K times is 1024 times 1024. So that map can only host about 1 million polygons of information. That's it. That's it. Right? If you go 2K, then you go 2048 times 2048. So now you're at about 4 million. Right? And then 4K, you keep doing those numbers, right? So 2K is going to be around 4. Right? I'm already polygon count sitting around 4. So, and then this map isn't using all the space. So there's a lot of dead space. So I'm losing millions of information in my UV layout. So really this scenario, 4K would probably be the map I'd make just to make sure all the information I'm getting out of ZBrush, where there's a 3.6 million, is really making sure being hosted in the UV laid out texture, displacement, or normal map. But if I divide it up one more time, right, in this model, 4K is not enough now. A 4K map's not enough for almost 14.5 million. So in ZBrush, we're sculpting on 14.5 million. You need to have a map that can host that information. So that's why the map sizes would be so important to you. Understanding that relationship is huge. Right? Well, you can UV inside of ZBrush. ZBrush will UV some higher polygon count stuff. UV Master will not. UV Master has a plateau, like around 100,000K, 150,000K. But some of these will UV millions of polygons. And then, yes, to Alex's point, yes, 4K textures would add cost to some of your performance. It's a give and take, right? Do you want fast performance but then not get the render quality you want? Or do you want the render quality and have a little bit of performance? But then to Alex, to your point, this is why they use UDIMs. So what they'll do is instead of hosting everything, right, in one UV space, they'll spread it out, and then they'll just, okay, instead of using a 4K map, I'll use 2K maps that will go and process faster for me. And you can't set up UDIMs in ZBrush. No. You can bring UDIMs in and we can support them where we can export all the maps. You can export all the maps across UDIMs with our plugin MME. Okay? But you can't we don't have a UV editor inside of ZBrush. There's no UV editor. All right, so there you go. There's your technical questions. Hopefully that helped. I don't even remember now who asked that question. Okay, one more question I want to talk about is this one. All right, let's get this model out of the way because now it's in the way. How to bend mesh around the pivot point of the world axis, not the pivot point of the center of the mesh. So I'm assuming, okay, I'm gonna close this text off because it's just too much now. Okay, I'm assuming, and again, I'm assuming in this question, and I'm hoping this is what they're asking. This, right, when I'm rotating, right, this is, I can center it to the mesh, right? I can move it somewhere else and do this, right? But let's turn our floor grid on. And let's say this is sitting out here, and say even sitting like this. So this is sitting somewhere else out in space. I can still get to the center of my model and do this, right? And rotate around the model, right? I can hold even the Alt key and then tap anywhere, and the gizmo's going to snap and then allow me to do this, right? But this person's like, well, what if I want to go back to the world? What if I want to rotate based around the world axis, which is over here? All you have to do is hold the Alt key or unlock the gizmo. Either one. I don't ever use this icon anymore. So Alt key, okay, or unlock. So if you notice, if I hold the Alt key, so you see I'm still holding the Alt key, the unlock opens up. Letting go of the Alt key, it's locked. Alt key, unlock. And then just hit the home. Boom. That's what the home is. The home is recentering the gizmo back to home to the world. Okay, and then now you have this. And now I'm rotating around the world axis. And no, there is no way to reset the rotation of the model in ZBrush. You can reset, excuse me, the translation points and the scale, but not the rotation of the model. No. Once you've rotated it, and like you leave for the day, you shut ZBrush down, there's no getting it back. There is a couple tricks you can do, but there's nothing you can just go to a slider and put it back to zeros. No. So how do I switch to the old school gizmo? Okay, would be the Y key, as in the letter Y, like yellow, Y axis. So the Y key will sit you in and out of, if that's what you're looking for. Thanks, Andy Metch. I got a coughing thing going on. Did you hear that coughing? Where did that accent come from? Okay. All right. So those are all the prepped questions I had for us. And then obviously we went through a bunch of questions together, which was great. You guys were really throwing the stuff at me today. This is awesome. This is why I enjoy this stream. I really love streaming. It's a lot of fun. How would you wrap leather around... Wait, how would you wrap a leather blade around a curved handle? You're going to have to do it by hand. Yodasuke. Like, you're going to have to make a... Like, you're going to have to either do it by hand. Right? So if I got to get out of this skin shade. I can't work like this. You got to... Like, if I grab, say... Let's see. Curve straps. Let's see where you at. No. Wow, my mind is just like, where are you? There it is. Okay, so obviously if you have something like along a curve, right, you'd be able to do this, right, and then this would just wrap around, right, and it's super dense right now. We don't need it this dense. And it's just painting with black right now. Let's turn off the colors. Okay, so this has just, this is the only thing you're going to do is wrapping like this. There's no quick way to do this. The only other thing they can do, which I did, I think I want to say the last stream I did this, is grab something like you said that already has a wrap to it. Right? Like a helix already has a wrap to it. And use this as like the mesh to put on something. Like if I'm going to put this on an arm, right? I would, here, let's load something that has an arm. Here, we'll load the demo soldier. So go to this, make this a poly mesh. And then I'm going to do this. I'm going to delete flat island. Again, like this. And then like this. And then I'm going to change the poly grouping here. I'm going to do a poly loop, poly group there. And assign another poly group there. Okay. And then this has already got a spiraling effect. So if I want to put this on his arm over here, is like, say, I don't know, some kind of bandage. Okay. I'm going to insert that helix. And then position it where I want it to be. Something like that, let's say. And then you would have to now start refining it. Right? This is really another way. I'm using the topology that already exists, spiraling in here. Right? And then making the polygroups was an important part for me. Right? And then I would use the move topological for this. So I can just start moving individual strap pieces through here. Let's put that one over. Okay, say something like that. And now if you just show only this polygroup, that's why I made those two polygroups. And now any insert mesh brush that you grab that's got curve mode on, right? I can say, here, let's put this necklace. You can just go to stroke and then frame it by the polygroups. And then see there'll be a curve in the middle, and now just tap. and you can see what I get. And so now if I look at only that, there, then this is going around. So this could be a way that you could do it, is use existing geometry. Okay? You can't swap the start and end once the curve's drawn out. You can't invert it. You can't do that. Not right now. That's not possible right now. And then, Lori, the difference between insert and append is very important. So append, when you're appending whatever you're going to append, it always puts it at the very bottom of the subtool list. So if you got 100, right, subtools, it's going to be 101. Okay, insert, like if I'm working on the backpack and now I want to like put a sphere in the list, that's what insert does. So if I go to insert and say sphere, you'll see the sphere actually gets dropped right below the backpack. It doesn't get added all the way to the bottom of the list. That's the difference between append and insert. And we use that vocabulary in multiple places. It's in array mesh. It's in also rendering materials for filters. Okay. Pablo, I couldn't say for sure. Unfortunately, I can't talk about development, unfortunately. You can export if you have multiple if you have multiple subtools and you want to export multiple like texture files or normal maps or displacement maps, that's what MME is for. You want to use multi-map exporter. And so you can say what maps you want to export here and even the meshes, and then we'll export them. And you export all maps and it'll go to every single subtool and export them all. And export every single UDIM. So to your question, you'd want to use this plugin to export every single map across multiple subtools. Okay? All right, I got to get going, unfortunately, everybody. Again, it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you stopping by and listening to my loud, obnoxious self. Try and give you guys as much information as I can. Hopefully, you all took away some more stuff. And there you go. The southern accent now is kicking in, y'all. All right, so I don't know why I'm not from the south. So I appreciate you all coming by and taking a look, throwing more questions. Okay? So it's been a lot of fun. Again, I'll see you again in another stream. I'll try and see again. We asked in the very beginning, someone was asked how I'm making my my molds in ZBrush for my gremlin. I can't promise you I'll be able to get that done next week. It might take me some time to get that done with my schedule right now. But tune in for my next stream. Just go to ZBrushLive.com. And this channel's always live every single day practically. Okay, so keep coming by, taking a look. And then all this is being recorded. It'll be up on our YouTube space, and it'll be up on our Twitch immediately following this. It'll come up after today. So stop by, watch it again if you want to. Hopefully you took a lot from this. This has been another episode of hashtag AskZBrushLive. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been really a pleasure having you here. And I am Paul Gaboury with Pixologic, and I am